Please like and subscribe, my favorite viewer. I hope you will be interested in listening to my story. Enjoy your listening experience. The first time Eliza saw Marcus, he was bathed in red light. She hadn't wanted to go to the gallery opening at all. Contemporary art installations weren't her thing. She preferred the reliability of oil paintings, the certainty of marble sculptures. But her roommate Jen had insisted, partly because Jen's new boyfriend was friends with the artist, and partly because Eliza hadn't left their apartment for anything other than work in 3 weeks. "It'll be good for you," Jen had said, rummaging through Eliza's closet for something besides sweatpants. "Besides, there's free wine." The gallery was a converted warehouse in the industrial district, all exposed brick and ductwork, with polished concrete floors that amplified every clink of glasses and burst of laughter. The installation was called Chromatic Emotions, and each room was bathed in a different colored light, meant to evoke specific feelings in the viewers. Eliza meandered through the blue room Serenity, according to the placard, and the yellow room Joy, nursing a plastic cup of mediocre Chardonnay and checking her watch. She'd promised Jen an hour. After that, she could call a rideshare and retreat back to the safety of her apartment, her worn paperbacks, and her Netflix queue. Then she entered the red room. The crimson light was almost suffocating, turning everyone's skin an eerie shade of scarlet. The walls were lined with photographs of people in various states of anger or passion, couples screaming at each other, a protester with fist raised, lovers entwined. The placard read, "Red, rage, desire, 2 sides of the same emotional intensity." And there he was, staring at a photograph of a man and woman arguing, their faces inches apart. Something about the way he stood, shoulders slightly hunched, head tilted, caught her attention. As if sensing her gaze, he turned. "What do you think?" he asked, gesturing to the photograph. "I think they're going to kiss or kill each other," Eliza said before she could stop herself. He laughed, a startling sound in the otherwise hushed room. "Exactly what I was thinking. I'm Marcus, by the way." Eliza. "So, Eliza, are you an art person or a free wine person?" "Definitely a free wine person who was dragged here against her will." His smile widened. "Same. My roommate's the artist." "No way, my roommate is dating your roommate's friend." "Small world," Marcus said. In the red light, his teeth looked almost feral when he smiled. "Want to dissect pretentious art installations with me?" And just like that, Eliza forgot about her 1-hour limit and her waiting rideshare app. Later, when she tried to explain to Jen how she'd ended up spending 4 hours with a stranger and coming home with his phone number, she couldn't quite articulate it. There had been something about Marcus in that red room, something honest and unexpected, something that made her feel fully awake for the first time in months. "I feel like we were the only 2 people seeing the same thing," she told Jen. "Like everyone else was looking at the art, but we were looking at the cracks between the art, you know?" Jen didn't know, but she was thrilled nonetheless. "I told you it would be good for you to get out." Eliza rolled her eyes but couldn't argue. After all, she'd already texted Marcus to arrange coffee for the following weekend. Their first official date was at a hole-in-the-wall cafe that Marcus swore had the best pastries in the city. Eliza arrived 10 minutes early, then spent 8 of those minutes debating whether to go inside alone or wait outside like she'd just arrived. She was about to push open the door when a battered orange bicycle screeched to a halt beside her. "Sorry I'm late," Marcus panted, locking his bike to a nearby rack. His cheeks were flushed from exertion and his dark curls were matted with sweat beneath his helmet. "I swear I'm usually punctual." "You're not late," Eliza said, checking her watch. "You're exactly on time." "Oh." He looked surprised. "That almost never happens." Inside, the cafe was warm and fragrant with the scent of baking bread and cinnamon. They found a small table by the window, and Marcus insisted Eliza try the orange cardamom morning buns. "They'll change your life," he promised. He wasn't wrong. The pastry was flaky and buttery, with a subtle citrus flavor that complemented the warm spice perfectly. Eliza closed her eyes in bliss. Okay, this might actually be worth waking up early for. High praise indeed. Marcus grinned, dusting crumbs from his fingers. So, Eliza, who hates art galleries and loves morning buns, What do you do when you're not being dragged to cultural events against your will? I'm a copy editor for a publishing house, she said. Mostly academic texts, some fiction, nothing exciting. Are you kidding? That sounds fascinating. You get paid to read books and find mistakes? Eliza laughed. Well, when you put it that way, it does sound pretty great. But it's mostly fixing Oxford commas and fielding angry emails from authors who don't want to change their dangling modifiers. I would read the hell out of your angry email collection. What about you? I'm a teacher, middle school science. Eliza winced sympathetically. That sounds challenging. It is, Marcus agreed, but in the best possible way. 12-year-olds are these perfect little bundles of curiosity and chaos. They'll ask you why the sky is blue one minute and then try to convince you that eating hand sanitizer is a good idea the next. As he spoke about his students, his eyes lit up. Eliza found herself entranced, not just by what he was saying, but by the way he was saying it with his whole body, hands gesturing, expressions changing rapidly. There was something almost childlike in his enthusiasm, a complete lack of self-consciousness that she found both foreign and compelling. They talked until their coffee went cold, then ordered fresh cups. The morning stretched into afternoon. Eliza learned that Marcus played bass in a terrible garage band, spoke fluent Spanish because of a childhood spent partially in Mexico with his father, and had an irrational fear of jellyfish despite living in a landlocked state. In turn, she told him about her collection of first-edition mystery novels, her failed attempt at culinary school before finding her true calling in publishing, and her close relationship with her grandmother, but calling in publishing and her close relationship with her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7. I'm sorry, Marcus said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand briefly. That must have been really hard. It was, Eliza admitted. But my gran was amazing. She taught literature at the community college, so our house was always full of books and interesting people. I think that's why I ended up in publishing. As they finally left the cafe, the late afternoon sun cast an orange glow across the street, reminding Eliza of Marcus's bicycle. Why orange? She asked, nodding toward the bike. It's very noticeable. That's exactly why, he said. I used to have a black one, but it got stolen twice. Nobody steals an orange bike that looks like it was painted by a 5-year-old. You painted it yourself? With spray paint and a dream, he confirmed. Plus, orange is the color of enthusiasm and creativity, according to my roommate the artist. I figured I could use more of both in my life. Standing there in the autumn light, Eliza thought the color suited him perfectly: warm, vibrant, unexpected. When he kissed her goodbye, his lips tasting faintly of orange and cardamom, she decided it might be her new favorite color too. Their third date was supposed to be dinner and a movie. Instead, they ended up stranded on the side of the highway in Marcus's ancient Volkswagen Beetle, which had finally given up the ghost after 15 years of faithful service. I'm so sorry, Marcus said for the 5th time, looking genuinely distressed as they waited for the tow truck. This is not how I planned this evening. Eliza leaned back against the headrest. It's fine, really, though I am a little disappointed about missing the movie. I've been wanting to see it for weeks. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then brightened. Wait here. He popped the trunk and rummaged around, returning with a wrinkled yellow blanket and a flashlight. Come on. Where are we going? Eliza asked, but she followed him anyway as he climbed over the guardrail and down the grassy embankment beside the highway. Here, Marcus said, spreading the blanket on a patch of grass. The spot was surprisingly secluded, sheltered from the road by a stand of trees. Above them, the sky was clear and speckled with stars. Stargazing? Eliza asked, settling beside him on the blanket. Not quite. Marcus propped the flashlight up on his backpack, pointing it at the blank white back of a road sign a few feet away. Movie time. He pulled out his phone and opened a video app. It won't be the big screen experience, but... Eliza laughed in delight as he positioned the phone in front of the flashlight. The makeshift projector cast a dim but watchable image onto the sign. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, she said, scooting closer to him as he hit play. Ridiculous good or ridiculous bad? She turned to look at him, his face glowing in the reflected light of the impromptu movie screen. Definitely good. An hour into the movie, the tow truck still hadn't arrived, but Eliza found she didn't mind. The night was warm, the movie surprisingly engrossing despite the less-than-ideal viewing conditions, and Marcus's arm around her shoulders felt right in a way she hadn't experienced before. When his phone battery finally died, they lay back on the blanket and looked at the stars instead. "That one's Orion," Marcus said, pointing, "and over there is Cassiopeia." "How do you know so much about constellations?" "Hazard of being a science teacher," he said. "Plus, I went through a major astronomy phase in middle school. I saved up for a telescope for an entire year, mowing lawns and walking dogs." "Did you get it?" "Yeah, I still have it actually. It's not fancy, but it works. I could show you sometime." Eliza turned her head to look at him. "I'd like that." Later, as they rode in the cab of the tow truck, Marcus's yellow blanket folded between them, Eliza realized she hadn't checked her phone once all evening. She hadn't worried about what time it was or whether she had emails to answer or how early she needed to be up for work the next day. For the first time in years, she had been completely present in the moment. It was a strange feeling, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The tow truck driver dropped them at Marcus's apartment, where they ordered pizza and watched the rest of the movie on his actually functional TV. When Eliza finally called a rideshare home at 1 a.m., she knew something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't just dating Marcus, she was falling for him, and that realization, bright and unavoidable as a yellow caution sign, both thrilled and terrified her. Spring arrived with a vengeance, turning the city park into a riot of green. Marcus insisted on a picnic to celebrate their 6-month anniversary, complete with a wicker basket and checkered blanket that he'd borrowed from his mother. "This feels very 1950s, Eliza said, watching him unpack containers of pasta salad, fresh fruit, and chocolate-dipped strawberries. "My grandparents had their first date at a picnic," Marcus explained. "It's a family tradition. They were married for 62 years. "Wow," Eliza said, a hint of panic fluttering in her chest at the implied connection. "That's impressive." If Marcus noticed her discomfort, he didn't show it. Instead, he produced a bottle of champagne and 2 plastic flutes with a flourish. "To 6 months of not getting sick of each other yet." Eliza laughed and raised her glass. "I'll drink to that." The afternoon was perfect warm, but not hot, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. After they ate, Marcus pulled out a frisbee, and they played until they were both sweaty and breathless with laughter. Collapsing back onto the blanket, Eliza felt a contentment she wasn't used to. Her previous relationships had always been weighted with anxiety, the constant analysis of every word, every gesture, every silence. But with Marcus, things were different, easier. Like slipping into a favorite sweater. "I have something for you," Marcus said, reaching into the picnic basket. He handed her a small package wrapped in green paper. "You didn't need to get me anything," Eliza protested, even as she carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a vintage first edition of Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. "Oh my God," Eliza breathed, carefully opening the cover to examine the copyright page. Marcus, this must have cost a fortune." He shrugged. "I have a student whose mom owns an antiquarian bookstore. She helped me find it." Eliza traced the embossed title with her finger, speechless. It was not only a first edition of one of her favorite mystery novels, but showed that Marcus had been listening all those months ago when she mentioned her collection. "Do you like it?" he asked, a rare note of uncertainty in his voice. "I love it," she said honestly. "It's perfect, but I didn't get you anything nearly this nice." "You don't need to. Besides, seeing your face just now was worth it." She leaned over to kiss him, the book clutched carefully in her hands. "Thank you." That night, as they lay in Marcus's bed, moonlight filtering through the blinds to cast striped shadows across their bodies, Eliza felt the words forming in her throat. 3 simple words that she hadn't said to anyone outside her family in years. But before she could speak, Marcus propped himself up on one elbow and looked down at her, his expression serious in the dim light. "I love you," he said simply. I probably have since that first day in the red room, but I figured I should wait at least 6 months to tell you so I wouldn't scare you off. Eliza felt her heart swell with an emotion too big for her chest. I love you too, she whispered back, surprised by how easy it was to say, how true it felt. Marcus's smile was radiant as he leaned down to kiss her, and in that moment, surrounded by the green glow of his alarm clock and the trailing ivy plant that hung in his bedroom window, Eliza felt something she hadn't expected to feel again after the loss of her parents, the sensation of putting down roots, of growing towards something rather than away from it. They moved in together after a year and a half, finding a 2-bedroom apartment with high ceilings and a balcony overlooking the river. The second bedroom became a shared office, with Marcus's science textbooks and graded papers occupying one corner while Eliza's editing work and book collection filled the other. Their lives blended with surprising ease. Marcus was messy but conscientious, always cleaning up after himself in shared spaces. Eliza was fastidious but flexible, learning to overlook the occasional sock on the floor or dish in the sink. But as the novelty of cohabitation wore off, the first cracks began to appear. It started with small things: Eliza's late nights during deadline season, Marcus's tendency to agree to social engagements without checking with her first, the different ways they approached money and future planning. Eliza saved methodically. Marcus gave generously to causes he cared about and figured the rest would sort itself out. Then came the job offer. A prestigious publishing house in New York wanted Eliza as a senior editor, double her current salary, full benefits, and the chance to work with best-selling authors rather than academic texts. "This is incredible," Marcus said when she told him, wrapping her in a hug. "I'm so proud of you." "I haven't accepted it yet," Eliza said carefully. "It would mean moving to New York." Marcus's smile faltered momentarily before returning. "Right, well, we can talk about that. Figure it out." But the conversation proved harder than either of them anticipated. "I can't just leave in the middle of the school year," Marcus said that night as they sat on their blue sofa, the one they'd bought together at a second-hand store and reupholstered over a pizza and wine-fueled weekend. "My students are counting on me." "I understand that," Eliza said, trying to keep her voice even. "But the position starts in September. That's 4 months away. Plenty of time for you to give notice." "And then what? I just follow you to New York and hope I can find a teaching job? In a market where I don't have any connections?" "There are schools everywhere, Marcus. Good schools that would be lucky to have you." "It's not that simple, and you know it. Teaching jobs are competitive, especially in New York. And what about my family? My friends? My band?" Eliza felt frustration bubbling up. "So I'm supposed to turn down the opportunity of a lifetime because you don't want to leave your garage band?" "That's not fair," Marcus said, hurt flashing across his face. "You know it's not just about the band." They went to bed that night without resolving anything, lying side by side but not touching, the blue glow of the digital clock marking the minutes as they ticked by in silence. The next week was tense, both of them tiptoeing around the subject during the day and returning to it at night, going in circles without making progress. Eliza found herself staying late at work, while Marcus picked up extra band practices and happy hours with colleagues. Then, on a rainy Tuesday, Eliza came home to find Marcus sitting at the kitchen table, a serious expression on his face, and a stack of papers in front of him. "What's that?" she asked, hanging her wet coat on the hook by the door. "Teaching job listings in New York," he said, "and apartment rental sites, and information about the New York State teaching certification process." He pushed the papers toward her. "I've been doing some research." Eliza sat down heavily. "You have?" "Yeah." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she'd come to recognize over their time together. "Look, I don't want to move to New York. I love it here. But I love you more, and this is your dream job. So if you want to take it, I'll go with you." Eliza stared at him, then at the papers, printed articles, job listings, certification requirements, all carefully highlighted and annotated. The evidence of hours spent researching a future he wasn't sure he wanted, just because she might. And suddenly, with a clarity that surprised her, Eliza realized she didn't want to go either. Not if it meant uprooting Marcus from a life he loved, a job where he thrived, a community he valued. "I'm going to turn it down," she said quietly. What? No, Eliza, you can't. I can, and I will. She reached across the table to take his hand. Yes, it's a great opportunity, but it's not the only opportunity I'll ever have. And what we have here are home, our life together that matters more to me. Are you sure? Marcus asked, his eyes searching hers. I don't want you to resent me 5 years from now. I'm sure, Eliza said, and she was. Besides, my boss already offered to match their salary if I stay. It won't be the same prestige, but the work will be just as interesting. Why didn't you tell me that? Eliza shrugged. I guess I needed to figure out what I really wanted. And sitting here, looking at you with all these papers, I realized it's this. Us. Our life here. That night, they made love with a renewed intensity, as if they'd narrowly avoided losing something precious. And as they lay together afterward, the blue light of the moon spilling through the window, Eliza wondered at how differently the day had ended than she'd expected. They'd faced their first real test as a couple, and somehow, they'd both been willing to sacrifice for the other. It wasn't perfect, she knew there would be more challenges ahead, but it felt like they'd crossed an important threshold. I love you, Marcus murmured sleepily, his arm tightening around her waist. I love you too, Eliza whispered back, realizing that the words felt even truer now than they had the first time she'd said them. 2 years into their relationship, Marcus's mother was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The news hit him like a physical blow, leaving him quiet and withdrawn in a way Eliza had never seen before. I need to go home, he said the night they got the news. She's going to need help with the treatments, the house, everything. Of course, Eliza said immediately. We'll go this weekend. Marcus looked up, surprise momentarily breaking through his shell of worry. You want to come? Unless you'd rather go alone? No, he said quickly. No, I'd like you to be there. It's just, it might be intense. And you've only met my mom once, at Christmas. She's important to you, so she's important to me, Eliza said simply. Besides, 2 people can help more than one. So they packed their bags and drove 4 hours to the small town where Marcus had grown up, arriving at his childhood home just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in deepening shades of indigo. Margaret Reyes was a small, fiercely independent woman with Marcus's same dark curls and expressive eyes. Despite her recent diagnosis, she insisted on preparing dinner for them, shooing away their offers of help with a determined wave of her hand. I'm not an invalid yet, she declared. Besides, cooking keeps my mind off things. Over a meal of homemade enchiladas, Marcus's favorite childhood dish, Margaret peppered Eliza with questions about her work, her family, her hobbies. It was a getting-to-know-you conversation that should have happened months ago, now accelerated by circumstance. Later, as Marcus did the dishes despite his mother's protests, Margaret led Eliza out to the back porch, where they sat in matching rocking chairs and watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. He's just like his father, Margaret said after a comfortable silence. Eduardo used to clean the kitchen too, no matter how tired he was from work. Marcus talks about him a lot, Eliza said. It sounds like they were close. They were. Eduardo taught him everything: how to fish, how to play guitar, how to respect women. Margaret smiled sadly. When we lost him, I was afraid Marcus would lose those parts of himself too, but he didn't. If anything, he became more determined to live the way his father had taught him. He's the most genuine person I've ever met, Eliza said honestly. Yes, Margaret agreed. That's exactly it. There's no artifice with Marcus. What you see is what you get. She turned to look at Eliza directly. He loves you very much, you know. I love him too. Good, because he's going to need that love in the coming months. Margaret's voice was matter of fact, without self-pity. Cancer is not just the patient's disease, it affects everyone who loves them. There will be days when he's scared, angry, hopeless. Days when he might push you away because it's easier than facing the possibility of loss. Eliza swallowed hard. I'll be there for him, for both of you. Margaret reached over to squeeze her hand. I know you will, dear. I can see it in the way you look at him. That's why I wanted to talk to you alone. To thank you in advance for being his rock when I can't be. The next few months were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and long nights at Margaret's house. Eliza used her accrued vacation time, then negotiated with her boss to work remotely 3 days a week so she could stay in town while Marcus took a leave of absence from teaching. They fell into a routine. Marcus would take his mother to her treatments in the mornings while Eliza worked from the dining room table. In the afternoons, they'd switch, with Eliza sitting with Margaret while Marcus graded papers for his substitute teacher or worked on lesson plans for his eventual return. The nights were the hardest. Margaret, weakened by the aggressive treatment protocol, often couldn't sleep, plagued by nausea and pain. Marcus would sit with her for hours, reading aloud from her favorite books or just holding her hand in silence. When he finally came to bed, exhausted and emotionally drained, Eliza would hold him as he cried quietly against her shoulder. "I can't lose her," he whispered one night, his voice raw. "I know it's selfish, but I'm not ready." "It's not selfish," Eliza said, stroking his hair. "It's human, and your mom is strong just like you. She's fighting with everything she has." "What if it's not enough?" Eliza had no answer for that, so she just held him tighter, offering the comfort of her presence when words failed. Through it all, Margaret remained stubbornly, determinedly herself. She insisted on accompanying them to the local farmers' market on good days, her head wrapped in a colorful scarf, greeting neighbors and friends with the same warmth she'd always shown. She taught Eliza her secret recipes, claiming that someone needed to know how to make Marcus's favorite foods the right way. And on clear nights, when the sky was at its deepest indigo, she would sit on the porch with them, pointing out constellations and telling stories about Marcus's childhood that made him groan with embarrassment and Eliza laugh until her sides hurt. "Remember, Mijo, joy is as important as grief," Margaret would say, "maybe more so." 6 months after her diagnosis, against the odds, Margaret's cancer went into remission. The news came on a crisp autumn day, the doctor's cautious optimism giving way to broad smiles as he reviewed her latest scan results. That night, they celebrated with a bottle of champagne on the porch, Margaret taking a small defiant sip despite her doctor's warnings about alcohol during recovery. "To life," she toasted, raising her glass to the indigo sky. "And to love, which makes life worth fighting for." As they drove back to the city the following weekend, leaving Margaret in the care of her sister who had come to stay, Eliza glanced over at Marcus. He looked exhausted but lighter somehow, as if a great weight had been partially lifted from his shoulders. "I couldn't have gotten through this without you," he said, reaching over to take her hand. "Thank you for being there, for understanding." "Always," Eliza promised, and she meant it through sickness and health, through joy and sorrow, through all the colors of their life together. They married in the spring, 3 years to the day after their first meeting in the Red Room of the art gallery. The ceremony was small and personal, held in the botanical garden where fragrant lavender and violet wisteria hung in cascades above their heads. Marcus wore a navy suit with a violet tie that Eliza had given him as an engagement gift. She chose a simple ivory dress with a sash in the same shade of violet. Their rings were plain platinum bands, inscribed with a single word, "Always." Eliza's grandmother, now in her 80s but still sharp as ever, sat in the front row beside Margaret, whose hair had grown back in a stylish silver pixie cut after her treatments. Their friends filled the remaining seats. Jen and her now husband, Marcus's bandmates, colleagues from both their workplaces, students who had graduated from Marcus's class and kept in touch. The reception was held at their favorite restaurant, where the chef, now a friend after years of Friday night dinner shad, created a menu that told the story of their relationship. Orange cardamom pastries from their first coffee date, enchiladas inspired by Margaret's recipe, chocolate-dipped strawberries from their picnic. As the evening wound down, Marcus led Eliza onto the small dance floor for their first dance as a married couple. The band Marcus's bandmates, playing with surprising skill and restraint, began a slow, melodic cover of the song that had been playing in the car the night they'd watched a movie projected onto a road sign. "Happy?" Marcus murmured against her ear as they swayed together. "Completely," Eliza answered, resting her head against his shoulder. "You?" "More than I ever thought possible." As they moved slowly around the floor, violet uplighting casting a gentle glow over the room, Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that first meeting in the Red Room to this moment, Their relationship had encompassed the entire spectrum of emotions, passion and joy, doubt and fear, comfort and hope. It hadn't always been easy. There had been arguments and misunderstandings, moments of friction as they learned to navigate life together. The 6 months of Margaret's illness had tested them both to their limits. And even after the wedding, Eliza knew there would be more challenges ahead: careers to balance, decisions about children, the ordinary difficulties of sharing a life. But standing there in Marcus's arms, surrounded by the people they loved most in the world, Eliza felt a certainty she'd never expected to find. This was where she belonged. This was home. Later that night, as they lay together in the honeymoon suite of a downtown hotel, the city lights casting a violet glow through the gauzy curtains, Marcus traced the curve of Eliza's cheek with gentle fingers. "I've been thinking," he said softly, "about that first night, in the gallery. Do you remember what the plaque in the Red Room said? About rage and desire being two sides of the same emotional intensity?" "I remember," Eliza said, smiling at the memory. "I think it's true of all emotions. Love and grief, joy and sorrow, they're all just different shades of the same human experience, different colors in the same spectrum." "Very philosophical for a science teacher," Eliza teased gently. Marcus laughed. "What can I say? You've ruined me with all your literature." Eliza propped herself up on one elbow to look down at him, at this man who had changed her life in ways she was still discovering. "I love you," she said simply. "All of you. Every color." "I love you too," Marcus replied, pulling her down for a kiss. "Every shade, every hue, every moment." And as they drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, their past behind them and their future stretching out in infinite possibilities, Eliza realized that their relationship wasn't just colorful, it was a masterpiece, painted in the full spectrum of human experience, more vivid and beautiful than any art gallery installation could ever be.